Back with you on In Focus. We continue with our rolling coverage and analysis on the ongoing United States elections. And we are now joined by Jahmiel Jackson, a political analyst, and he is with the Chicago Thinker on what are some of the issues that are driving voters to the polls. Jahmiel, good to have you. Thank you very much for coming on this evening. I suppose it's your afternoon, but quite late this side. But let's come in. What are the polls telling us about what are some of the issues that are driving voters right now? We just had a conversation that Gen Z is particularly interested in the stability of the economy and the economy working for them.
Yes, thank you for having me on. I think Gen Zers, especially young men, and I think this is why you see such a stark gender divide in the ongoing elections. Women are voting overwhelmingly for Kamala Harris, whereas men are voting for Donald Trump. When it comes to Gen Zers, we're worried about the economy, immigration, but also what's going on in terms of international affairs. If a wider war does happen in Ukraine or what's happening in the Middle East, they're going to be sending military-aged men like myself, I'm 23 years old, to go fight in a country that we can't even speak the language of. So when I do talk to a lot of my male friends, we do see a sense of urgency. Also, I'm about to graduate college. I'm looking at paying back my student loans. I'm looking at where am I going to move. So the economy definitely is impacting a lot of our decisions. Can we pay back the money we're taking out to pay for our education? And I think that's why you see the two campaigns have very stark, different, two different messages on the economy and where we should move forward.
Why are black men in particular not confident in Kamala Harris, particularly dealing with economic issues?
That's a great question. I think one, she's always ran on more progressive social issues, such as decriminalizing immigration or such as banning assault weapons. I also think she hasn't shown herself to be a tough person. She's dodged a lot of interviews, a lot of controversial policy positions she says just no comment to. I think whereas you see President Trump, he just says whatever comes to mind. You can tell from his success in his career or the success he had in 2017 to 2019 that he was all about transactions. He was all about saying what's best for the United States. Whereas Kamala Harris is sort of seen more as a globalist to black men. Even though she does claim to be black, she hasn't been in our community. She hasn't been advocating for us for the last 3.5 years. And then lastly, with her move to allocate millions of illegal immigrants into our communities, black communities in particular, a lot of our resources have been siphoned away to take care of them. So we don't see her as an economic good for us.
Yeah. Interesting that you say that Kamala has been quite global in her view and in her approach. The former Secretary of State, the 66th U.S. Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, in her recent Foreign Affairs article wrote, "The world still needs the United States and the United States still needs the world." Rice warned of emerging trends she terms the four horsemen of the apocalypse: populism, nativism, isolationism, and protectionism, noting that they tend to ride together. She is calling for an America that is still going to go out and give some kind of international leadership and be concerned about what is happening in the world more than just minding their own business. Is that not something that is driving voters right now?
Yes, I think that quote was spot on. However, I want to caution your viewers is that when Biden and Kamala Harris took office, we immediately tried to pull out in Afghanistan a few months after his inauguration, and we completely botched that. So the world, a lot of our adversaries has seen us as a paper tiger. The United States, we hold up a lot of our agreements, our allies, a lot of the foreign policy runs through us. However, we care more about who is in power first, because smart policy decisions will allow us to take care of ourselves, to take care of our young ones, our Gen Zers, and then we can move forward and abroad to help out with our alliances, to help out with trade agreements, to make sure peace is all over the world that's possible. But as you can see with the current leadership, Kamala Harris, where we have two ongoing hot wars, it is not normal for Israel to shoot missiles into Iran and Iran to shoot missiles into Israel. And I think it's okay for us to wake up to the realization everything is not going okay in the United States.
Yeah. There's some who are worried that, you wake up tomorrow with either Donald Trump or a Kamala Harris administration. It might mean different things in terms of how you deal with the economic and security rivals, i.e. China.
Yes, I definitely see Kamala Harris as more being sheepish towards China. She hasn't had a tough conversation while she's been in office. She's been a candidate who hasn't given a single press conference. I'm not sure what the precedent is for your country or other countries, but it's very unusual for a candidate to dodge so many tough questions. If you can't handle tough questions from the press or voters, we cannot expect you to hold President Xi accountable in terms of his unfair trade agreements. Whereas Donald Trump, he's made it very clear from day one, even when he was in office, that China was going to pay their fair share in terms of cross-border tariffs and also cross-border imports and exports.
So others saying that there has to be a far more nuanced U.S. policy when it comes to a workable relationship with China. I mean, as a student yourself, would you particularly be open to having Chinese students at the universities?
I think this is a part of national security, and a lot of people have different opinions about this. I see China about 18% of the world's GDP. They're definitely our most prevalent adversary in terms of China doesn't want to fight us militarily. I think everyone agrees with that. There's only two ways China wants to see us retract from the world stage, and that's politically, where we separate from each other, we secede, and there's a lot of political turmoil in the United States. Secondly is with our dollar. Us being the world standard, I definitely do see them positioning themselves in the BRICS alliance to remove us from the world standard. With Chinese students specifically, I think, yes, a lot of them perform academically well, and they have a lot of numbers in our institutions. At the same time, I think it's a part of our national security to make sure in these prestigious institutions like the University of Chicago, which I go to, or Harvard or Yale, seats be allocated specifically for United States citizens to make sure that we're getting the best education possible to compete with them.
Yeah. In South Africa, certainly one of the big issues right now is the war in the Middle East, and they would want to see the United States in particular being a little bit more vocal in the human rights violations that are taking place there. And in fact, they would want to see more United States that is offering alternatives. And there is currently no sense that either of the two candidates would give that kind of support.
I think on that specific issue, that is 100% true. Israel, they say, is our strongest ally. So when I see Kamala Harris in terms of she only calls for a ceasefire when Israel's being attacked, I think that's like walking foot over foot, but you're tripping over your shoelaces. You can't put your own barriers in front of you in terms of negotiating policy between two world leaders. With President Trump specifically, he's already said, one, if he was president, this war wouldn't have happened. I think a lot of us already agree. But we can't go back into the past and unwish a war. So if he is in office, what we expect to see is a quick end to the war. And if things aren't efficient, if things aren't with humanitarian aid also being at the forefront of whatever deal that's going on, I definitely do see Trump as the more hard line to say, this needs to end now. And these are the levers I'm going to use that might be controversial to get Benjamin Netanyahu to listen to the United States.
Yeah. Now, again, being a black man, many Haitian migrants are in the United States legally under temporary protected status. There are those who are saying when Trump comes into power, he says he would revoke their rights to live in the United States. How do you feel about that?
I definitely think it is possible. I think in 3.5 years, if we've seen over 10 or 12 million illegal immigrants come into our country, then we must also be okay with the opposite. I'm also realistic. I know he's not going to deport 10 million people in his next term if he wins. I don't necessarily look at race to say Haitians do share a similar skin color to me. What the Biden-Harris administration has done is give them temporary protected status, which is it's a false version of legal status here in the United States that you can just wave to a large group of people to say you can come here. A lot of these people from Haiti, they're coming here for economic means, and our current policy does not accommodate people who are poor, who are struggling in their home country. A lot of people around the world are struggling as well. So we can't open our door to everyone in the entire world. So I think it is going to be sad seeing a lot of them go, but we only have to blame the current politicians in office for lying to these people and giving them so many incentives to come here at the cost of actual Black American citizens like myself.
Yeah. The question on reproductive rights, Republicans saying, well, there's now a woke generation that's particularly going to be voting in these elections, big on issues like reproductive rights, issues like climate change, issues like gun violence, and so on and so forth. How important are these for your generation?
I think for a lot of young women, abortion is at the top of mind. And it's sort of been a lie that we're selling to each other. On one hand, you have a lot of young men like myself. We might have to go to war in one of these hot conflicts. On the other hand, you have a lot of women here and a lot of some men as well. They have embraced the Democratic Party's agenda of death, being pro-death. And I think when you see our struggling birth rates, we're not replacing ourselves. We'd rather expect illegal immigrants to come here and to pick up our slack. We see women not necessarily cherishing what it means to reproduce, what it means to have a family. People are focused on, can someone at the 9th month of a pregnancy abort their baby? Or if a baby survives a botched abortion, can that woman still choose to have the doctors kill that fetus? So yes, I think people are more so attracted to, in my generation, the emotional appeal and not the rational ones in terms of the economy. I think the numbers, like 59% of women report that financial issues lead them to get an abortion in the first place. So a lot of people, like young people, are just going to make foolish decisions. They're going to make mistakes, especially with their vote. And I do think this is a miscalculation that I think young people around the world always make, is that listening to the ideals and the aspirations, what Kamala Harris says, is just a better option to go. Whereas making the tough decisions, which is actually practical and rational, is going the route of Donald Trump.
Jahmiel Jackson, appreciate your time, political commentator and chief operations officer at the Chicago Thinker there, on what are the issues that are driving the voter right now.